Rome, 1982. A figure dressed in clerical garments moves along the cobblestone pathways surrounding the Vatican. His expression is serene, his bearing modest. In his hands, a leather Bible and a rosary. To those who pass him on the street, he appears as nothing more than yet another priest in a metropolis overflowing with them. Yet hidden underneath the black cassock, he conceals a 9mm Beretta, along with a photograph of a face he has committed to memory, every minute scar included. 2 blocks distant, a different priest steps into a cafe, requests an espresso, and takes a seat beside the window. The coffee remains untouched. His gaze sweeps across the street beyond the glass, searching for a particular vehicle, a particular individual. A third priest lingers within the shadows cast by an age-old basilica, murmuring quietly into a radio transmitter camouflaged as a book of prayers. These men are not members of the clergy. They are Mossad operatives, and their quarry is among the most lethal individuals on the planet. His identity is Abu Nidal, although this is not the name given to him at birth. He is a mastermind of terror whose network has claimed the lives of hundreds throughout Europe and the Middle East. He has orchestrated bombings, contract killings, and aircraft seizures. His victims have included diplomats, ordinary citizens, and young children. And at this moment, following months of careful observation, Israeli intelligence has discovered that he will arrive in Rome for a secret rendezvous with Italian weapons merchants. The mission designed to eliminate him bears the name Divine Intervention, a grim piece of humor among the operatives who have spent weeks in preparation. They have analyzed the layout of Rome, its houses of worship, its potential escape pathways. They have absorbed the patterns of Vatican life, the timetables kept by priests, the flows of tourist traffic, and they have selected the single disguise that renders them invisible throughout a city where members of the clergy are omnipresent. The black cassock and white collar worn by Catholic priests. What unfolds is a mission that merges careful planning with explosive violence, patience paired with exactness. This is an account of how intelligence organizations convert city streets into zones of pursuit, how operatives vanish so thoroughly into assumed identities that even those actively seeking them perceive nothing out of the ordinary, and how an individual who considered himself beyond reach learned that no refuge, not even the vicinity of the Vatican, could shield him from the extent of Israeli retribution. Abu Nidal entered the world as Sabri Khalil al-Banna in May of 1937 in Jaffa, at that time a part of British Mandatory Palestine. His origins were privileged. His father, a successful merchant dealing in orange groves who possessed substantial property and kept dozens of laborers employed. The 1948 conflict transformed everything. The household fled toward the West Bank, then controlled by Jordan, abandoning their land, their accumulated riches, and their place in society amid the turmoil of forced relocation. The degradation of becoming displaced persons, of existing in refugee settlements, and of relying upon United Nations food supplies molded the young Sabri's understanding of the world. He would state in later years that the dispossession of Palestine represented not merely a political occurrence, but a deeply personal injury that remained unhealed. During the 1950 seconds, he aligned himself with the Ba'ath Party, attracted by its pan-Arab nationalist philosophy and its commitment to restoring Arab honor through unification and armed resistance. He possessed intelligence, magnetism, and a capacity for brutality, attributes that attracted the notice of Palestinian militant groups emerging after the 1948 Nakba. By the opening years of the 1960 seconds, he had become a member of Fatah, Yasser Arafat's movement, and assumed the nom de guerre Abu Nidal, translated as Father of Struggle. His ascent through the hierarchy was rapid, building a reputation as a capable organizer and an individual prepared to employ extreme brutality in pursuit of political goals. However, Abu Nidal proved too extreme even for Fatah's standards. In 1974, as Arafat started shifting toward a diplomatic approach that recognized the potential for peaceful coexistence with Israel, Abu Nidal severed ties in outrage. He regarded any accommodation with Israel as treachery, any dialogue as capitulation. He established his own group, the Fatah Revolutionary Council, and waged war not solely against Israel, but against any Palestinian figure who considered the possibility of reconciliation. Throughout the subsequent 10 years, his network executed some of the most savage acts of terrorism in contemporary history. In 1982, operatives under Abu Nidal's command made an attempt on the life of Shlomo Argov, the Israeli ambassador to the United Kingdom. Argov survived the attack, though he was left paralyzed. The assault prompted Israel's military incursion into Lebanon, an escalation that Abu Nidal had intentionally engineered to sabotage Arafat's peace initiatives and force the Palestinian struggle back into violent confrontation. In 1985, members of his organization seized control of Egyptair Flight 648, resulting in the deaths of 60 passengers after Egyptian special forces raided the aircraft. In 1986, his operatives attacked the Neve Shalom synagogue, located in Istanbul, massacring 22 people at worship with grenades and automatic firearms during Shabbat observances. He orchestrated cafe bombings in Paris, executed shootings of travelers at airports throughout Rome and Vienna, and coordinated political assassinations spanning Europe. Intelligence organizations across numerous continents pursued him, yet Abu Nidal remained phantom-like. He relocated constantly, employing fabricated identities and receiving protection from governments that considered him advantageous. Syria provided him sanctuary for years, subsequently expelling him when his presence created diplomatic complications. Libya's Muammar Gaddafi supplied him with financial resources, training facilities, and protected residences. Iraq offered him haven when his capabilities proved useful for operations directed against Iranian and Syrian interests. He maintained a luxurious lifestyle, surrounded by armed guards, shielded by multiple layers of protection that rendered direct assault against him virtually inconceivable. Mossad had designated him as a maximum priority objective. However, eliminating Abu Nidal was not merely a question of locating him and executing him. He maintained too much protection, exercised too much caution, remained too conscious that numerous intelligence organizations desired his elimination. Any mission targeting him would demand months of observation, penetration of his networks, and flawless coordination. For years, Mossad observed and remained patient, accumulating intelligence, charting his whereabouts, detecting weaknesses. Then, during the spring of 1982, a window of opportunity appeared. Israeli intelligence obtained information through an informant embedded within Abu Nidal's network that he was arranging a journey to Rome. The objective involved a conference with Italian arms merchants capable of providing weaponry for attacks across Europe. The conference was set for late June, and Abu Nidal intended to travel with reduced security personnel because he trusted that Rome's complexity and his meticulous operational precautions ensured his safety. The intelligence possessed sufficient detail to enable action. Specific dates, specific places, specific protocols for contact. Mossad's command structure greenlit Operation Divine Intervention. The preparation stage consumed multiple weeks. Mossad's operational branch, collaborating with Caesarea, the division tasked with targeted eliminations, examined every aspect of Rome's terrain and security landscape. They pinpointed Abu Nidal's probable routes, his anticipated lodging, and the sites where he might conduct his meetings. They scrutinized Roman law enforcement patrol schedules, surveillance camera installations, and the activities of Italian intelligence organizations who might identify foreign operatives engaged in clandestine missions. The choice to employ religious disguises was carefully calculated. Rome posed distinctive operational obstacles. It functioned as a significant European capital, possessing advanced security apparatus. Italian intelligence maintained cooperation with Israeli colleagues on certain issues, but would never permit assassinations on Italian territory without advance permission, which Israel would not seek because official awareness would generate diplomatic tensions. The metropolis was densely populated, heavily monitored, and filled with plainclothes officers who remained alert for questionable conduct. Yet Rome simultaneously presented a distinctive benefit: the Vatican. The city held thousands of priests, monks, and nuns who traveled without restriction through the streets, accessed buildings without arousing suspicion, and congregated in public areas without drawing scrutiny. Religious garments operated as social concealment, providing invisibility through commonness. Citizens observed priests and categorized them as background features of the urban environment, rather than as individuals demanding examination. Mossad strategists understood that operatives costumed as clergy could execute surveillance, shadow objectives, and arrange themselves for action without activating the defensive alertness that men wearing business attire or casual dress might trigger. The disguise additionally offered psychological protection for the operatives themselves. Fully inhabiting a role diminishes the tension of sustaining a fabricated identity. When every individual you meet anticipates you to be a priest, conducting yourself as a priest transforms from theatrical to instinctive. 6 operatives received selection for the assignment. All were experienced Caesarea members with backgrounds in deep cover missions and the mental fortitude necessary to inhabit false personas under pressure. They possessed fluency in Italian, knowledge of Catholic ceremonies, and the capacity to maintain clerical characters convincingly enough to withstand casual encounters with genuine clergy members. Mossad's preparation division had readied them through weeks of complete immersion in Catholic tradition, examining liturgical practices, memorizing prayers in Latin, and rehearsing the gestures and demeanor of priests. The squad entered Rome individually across a 10-day span throughout early June. They utilized different arrival points, airports in Milan and Naples, railway terminals in Florence, and journeyed on authentic European passports produced through Mossad's document creation division. Their fabricated backgrounds identified them as participants in a Catholic missionary association visiting Rome for a symposium on interfaith exchange. The association actually existed, and its genuine participants possessed no awareness that Israeli operatives were utilizing its identity. They registered at unpretentious hotels surrounding the Vatican, facilities that accommodated clergy, and where a solitary priest checking in would pass without notice. They participated in Mass at various churches, developed patterns of morning constitutionals and evening devotions, and evolved into recognized presences in communities where complete anonymity proved impossible, but unremarkable existence was readily attainable. They dined at establishments patronized by priests, browsed bookshops that stocked theological literature, and devoted hours to libraries connected to religious organizations. The observation stage demanded exceptional patience. Abu Nidal was projected to arrive on June 24th, yet intelligence could not verify his precise whereabouts or activities until he physically materialized in the city. The operatives engaged in what Israeli intelligence terms environmental preparation, charting the zones where Abu Nidal would probably conduct business and locating positions from which they could watch without attracting observation themselves. They identified 3 sites where Abu Nidal might convene with his associates. A dining establishment in Trastevere, recognized for accommodating discreet commercial gatherings, a private members club situated near Piazza Navona, frequented by weapons brokers, and a storage facility in the industrial periphery where armament exchanges frequently transpired. Mossad's technical division had installed listening apparatus in the restaurant and club months previously during an independent operation, supplying instantaneous audio should Abu Nidal utilize those venues. On June 23rd, Abu Nidal touched down in Rome, employing a Libyan diplomatic passport bearing the name Ahmad Hassan. An Italian intermediary met him at Fiumicino Airport and transported him to a villa situated in the outskirts, a protected location owned through a shell corporation connected to Libyan intelligence. Israeli observers operating from a leased apartment positioned across the roadway verified his arrival through telephoto imaging. The photographs were relayed to Mossad headquarters located in Tel Aviv, where intelligence analysts confirmed positive target identification. The mission's command center occupied a compact apartment near the Colosseum, leased under the identity of a German tourist. Within its walls, 3 Mossad technicians managed communications apparatus that sustained encrypted dialogue with Tel Aviv and orchestrated the deployments of the 6 field operatives. The apartment's windows remained covered with light-blocking drapes. City maps papered the walls, annotated with routes, contingency positions, and evacuation coordinates. Abu Nidal's initial appointment was arranged for the evening of June 24th at the Trastevere restaurant. 2 operatives, both attired in black cassocks, stationed themselves in a cafe situated across the thoroughfare. One perused a breviary, the other labored on a sermon he feigned composing. Both wore miniature earpieces disguised as hearing devices, accepting transmissions from the command center regarding Abu Nidal's location. At 7:45 p.m., a black Mercedes materialized. Abu Nidal emerged accompanied by 2 bodyguards, both bearing hidden firearms beneath their jackets. They proceeded into the restaurant and received escort to a private dining chamber on the upper level. The surveillance operatives verified his attendance and relayed the data. The elimination squad, positioned 3 blocks distant in a van camouflaged as church maintenance transport, obtained the authorization to proceed. However, the operation terminated abruptly at the final instant. Italian law enforcement conducting standard patrol duties parked immediately before the restaurant. The timing represented pure coincidence, not the consequence of any intelligence concerning Abu Nidal's whereabouts, yet it generated unacceptable exposure. An assassination executed with police in immediate proximity would ensure instant pursuit, potentially jeopardizing the complete team. The command center transmitted orders to withdraw. Abu Nidal departed the restaurant 2 hours subsequently, oblivious to how narrowly he had escaped death. He returned to the villa, and the surveillance operatives maintained distant pursuit, confirming his position before withdrawing. The unsuccessful attempt proved exasperating, yet Mossad's operational philosophy prioritized patience. Repeated failures establish recognizable patterns that subjects can identify. The subsequent opportunity demanded absolute success. Intelligence intercepts disclosed that Abu Nidal's secondary meeting would transpire on June 26 at the Piazza Navona Social Club. This venue presented superior tactical conditions. The club occupied a constricted street with constrained vehicular entry, necessitating that Abu Nidal traverse approximately 50 meters from where his automobile could station itself. Those 50 meters constituted vulnerability. The strategy underwent revision. 2 operatives would assume positions as street priests, commonplace throughout Rome, who positioned themselves outside churches, requesting contributions for charitable endeavors. A third would occupy a cafe maintaining direct observation of the club's doorway. A fourth would masquerade as a street merchant vending religious icons and rosaries from a compact cart situated at the intersection where Abu Nidal's vehicle would park. The actual killing would be executed by the final 2 operatives, who would close distance with Abu Nidal during his walk to the club, pretending to require navigational assistance. At intimate range, they would extract hidden firearms and discharge them. On the morning of June 26th, the squad deployed into position. The street merchant established his cart at 6 a.m., 6 hours preceding Abu Nidal's scheduled appearance. He traded rosaries and diminutive crucifixes with tourists, cementing himself as a permanent element of the street's regular activity. The cafe operative arrived at 11 a.m., requesting coffee and situating himself where he maintained visual access to both the club's threshold and the parking zone. At 1:45 p.m., Abu Nidal's Mercedes advanced. The surveillance operative positioned in the cafe transmitted into his hidden radio, "Target approaching." The assassination squad, waiting within a proximate alleyway, commenced movement toward the designated interception coordinates. All elements were advancing according to design. Then Abu Nidal's vehicle halted 50 meters before the anticipated parking location. The driver, a Libyan security specialist trained in counter-surveillance methodology, had detected something that provoked unease. Perhaps the street vendor whose cart had remained stationary throughout the day. Perhaps the manner in which the cafe patron's attention lingered excessively upon the street. Whatever triggered the reaction, the driver executed a reversal and departed. The command center ordered immediate termination. The operatives dispersed, returning to their accommodations through independent pathways. That evening, they assembled at the apartment to examine what had malfunctioned. The collective assessment determined that Abu Nidal's protection detail possessed greater sophistication than projected. His bodyguards had received training to identify surveillance operations, to register details that typical individuals disregarded. For 3 days, Abu Nidal remained sequestered at the villa, transacting his affairs through intermediaries. Mossad evaluated assaulting the residence, but dismissed the concept as excessively hazardous. A villa assault would necessitate expanded personnel, more substantial weaponry, and acceptance of probable civilian fatalities should neighbors become entangled. It would additionally manufacture a diplomatic catastrophe that Israel preferred to prevent. On June 30th, intelligence intercepts indicated that Abu Nidal was arranging his departure from Rome. His conferences had terminated successfully, and he had acquired armaments from the Italian merchants. His scheduled departure was July 2nd via transport to Tripoli. The window for intervention was contracting. Then circumstance delivered an opportunity. Abu Nidal's Libyan associate extended an invitation for him to attend Mass at St. Peter's Basilica on July 1st. The invitation appeared peculiar. Abu Nidal practiced Islam, and attending Catholic Mass served no apparent function. However, the associate clarified that several European business contacts who might prove valuable for future ventures would attend, and the Mass constituted a neutral environment for introductions. St. Peter's Basilica represented extraordinary tactical complications. It ranked among Rome's most heavily monitored sites, with Vatican security, Italian protection services, and perpetual masses of tourists. Executing an assassination within the basilica was unfeasible. However, the approach to St. Peter's through the colonnades surrounding St. Peter's Square presented alternatives. The strategy underwent further refinement. The operatives would establish positions throughout the crowds populating the square, assimilating as priests touring the Vatican. When Abu Nidal accessed the square, they would advance toward him as though requesting to discuss a subject of reciprocal concern. At intimate proximity, amid the disorder of crowds, they would discharge suppressed firearms and vanish into the congregation of tourists and clergy before security forces could respond. On the morning of July 1st, the squad congregated in St. Peter's Square. 5 operatives, all costumed in clerical vestments, scattered throughout the colonnades. The 6th maintained position outside the square, with a motorcycle arranged to supply emergency exfiltration if circumstances demanded. They waited. At 10:30 a.m., Abu Nidal arrived in a taxi rather than his customary Mercedes. He traveled with his Libyan associate and a single bodyguard. They proceeded through the colonnades toward the basilica threshold, advancing gradually through the masses. The surveillance operative verified identification and conveyed "target confirmed," advancing toward basilica entrance. 2 assassination operatives initiated convergence on Abu Nidal's coordinates. They advanced casually, navigating through tourists, their hands concealed within their cassocks gripping weapons. They had closed to 10 meters when Abu Nidal's bodyguard, scrutinizing the crowd, established visual contact with one of the operatives. Something within that instant, a momentary recognition, an instinct refined through years of protecting high-value objectives, compelled the bodyguard to interpose himself between Abu Nidal and the approaching priests. The bodyguard issued a sharp warning in Arabic, alerting Abu Nidal. The terrorist commander rotated and observed the 2 priests advancing toward him with deliberate purpose. His reaction was instantaneous, seizing his associate and pulling him toward the basilica entrance, utilizing the crowd as concealment. The bodyguard extracted a pistol, provoking immediate terror among tourists who shrieked and dispersed. The assassination operatives possessed seconds for decision-making. Discharge weapons within the crowd and accept civilian casualties, or terminate and acknowledge mission failure. The command center monitoring through encrypted radio transmission ordered, "Abort, repeat, abort." The operatives secured their weapons and dissolved into the panicking masses. Vatican security responded within seconds, converging on the location where the bodyguard had revealed his weapon. However, by the time they materialized, Abu Nidal had disappeared into the basilica, shielded by the sanctuary of one of Catholicism's most sacred locations. The operatives evacuated the square through different directions, abandoning their clerical vestments in pre-positioned locations and transforming into tourist attire. Abu Nidal remained sequestered inside the basilica for 3 hours, protected by Vatican security, who had received notification of a security emergency. Italian authorities negotiated his protected passage to the Libyan embassy, where diplomatic protection insulated him from detention or intervention. He departed Rome that evening aboard a Libyan diplomatic aircraft. Operation Divine Intervention received classification as unsuccessful. Despite weeks of preparation and repeated attempts, Abu Nidal had evaded capture. However, the operation had exposed something significant. His security apparatus could be infiltrated, his movements could be documented, and his faith in his own imperviousness could be undermined. The operation's disclosure emerged through Italian journalism. Reporters informed by Vatican informants published accounts that Israeli operatives costumed as priests had attempted an assassination in St. Peter's Square. The Italian administration protested through diplomatic pathways, demanding clarifications. Israel released denials, yet the sequence was recognizable. Accusations without substantiation, objections without ramifications. Within Mossad, the operation underwent comprehensive analysis. The clerical camouflage had functioned successfully for observation and positioning, but had ultimately collapsed because Abu Nidal's protection detail recognized the danger. The conclusion drawn was that disguises provide invisibility exclusively until the instant of engagement. Once firearms are revealed, once intention becomes apparent, camouflage becomes meaningless. Abu Nidal perpetuated his terrorist activities for an additional 2 decades, sheltered by regimes that appreciated his capabilities. He perished in Baghdad during August 2002, officially through self-inflicted death, though numerous sources suspect he was eliminated by Iraqi intelligence under Saddam Hussein's directive when he transformed from asset to burden. The operatives who pursued him in Rome returned to Israel and continued their classified duties. Their identities remain undisclosed. Their images do not surface in any public repository. The clerical vestments they utilized were incinerated. The firearms they transported were eliminated, and the operation they executed exists exclusively in restricted files, accessible exclusively to individuals possessing the supreme security authorizations. However, the account persists as an illustration of how intelligence organizations function in hostile territories, how operatives assimilate into environments through meticulous preparation and disciplined execution, and how even the most comprehensive planning cannot ensure success when subjects maintain vigilance and fortune proves unpredictable. The priests who traversed Rome during the summer of 1982 were not clergy whatsoever. They were combatants in an unseen conflict, pursuing an individual who had murdered hundreds and would murder hundreds more. They failed to eliminate him that day. Yet they established something that intelligence organizations comprehend and that terrorists must perpetually fear: that no sanctuary exists as absolute, no protection functions as flawless, and that the reach of those who pursue them extends beyond their imagination. Into cities they presume are secure, into crowds they assume provide protection, even into the shadow of the Vatican itself.